अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। In this session we are continuing the discussion from the 6th and 7th verses of the 9th chapter of 1st canto Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a description about the different great sages who arrived when Bhishma was preparing to quit his body after the battle of Kurukshetra. So Bhishma is going to instruct Yudhishthira, and through Yudhishthira is instructing the whole world. So because his departure is exemplary, great sages from all over the universe arrived, and the list is given here of so many sages. In the previous session, I was able to cover few sages, exactly 5 sages. Now the remaining sages we will discuss in this session. The verses 6 and 7 is giving the list of the sages who came from different parts of the universe to actually be present for the instructions given by Bhishma Deva to Yudhishthira and also his departure. Parvato Narado Dhaumyo Bhagavan Badarayanaha Brihadashvo Bharadvajaha Sashishyo Renuka Sutaha Vasishta Indra Pramadaha Krito Gritsamado Asitaha Kakshivan Gautamo Atrishcha Kaushiko Atha Sudarshanaha. The meaning of this is that the list of the sages is given, those who were present when Bhishma Deva was preparing to quit his body. All the sages like Parvata Muni, Narada, Dhaumya, Vyasa, the incarnation of God, Brihadashva, Bharadvaja, and Parashurama and disciples, Vasishta, Indra Pramada, Trita, Gritsamada, Asita, Kakshivan, Gautama, Atri, Kaushika, and Sudarshana were present. So the description is given by Srila Prabhupada in the purport about the great sages. A brief biography of the sages is presented by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. Kindly hear now. The sage Brihadashva is being described in the purport. An ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthira now and then. In the Vedic times, kings who were ruling would receive saintly persons very respectfully and would worship them, inquire from them, hear from them, and take their blessings to rule the kingdom according to the religious principles. So the sages used to visit such great kings to actually give their association, give their wisdom, give their blessings, give their association. So Brihadashva, a great sage, used to visit Maharaj Yudhishthira now and then. First of all, he met King Yudhishthira at Kamyavana. This sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. When Yudhishthira and the Pandavas were in exile, they were always accompanied by some sages. And the sages used to give association by narrating ancient histories of great personalities. Simply by hearing, they would be able to actually get inspiration, get uh, the uh, the courage to uh, spend their time in the proper manner. Otherwise, what will they do in the forest? They are all kings, they are all Kshatriyas. So, for a Kshatriya to live in the forest and spend time, 13 years, the Pandavas had to be in exile. So, how would they spend their time? So, the process of bhakti is such that one engages in hearing, chanting, and other such devotional practices in the association of great saintly persons, great devotees, great sages, great rishis, like that. So, this sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. Nala was another king who lived in an earlier time than the time of the Pandavas, and Nala also underwent a lot of difficulties. But because of his being very much devoted to following religious principles, he was able to actually come out successful, even though he was uh, facing a lot of difficulties. The material world is declared to be a place filled with so many difficulties. That's the nature of this material world. So, if we are fixed on the goal of self-realization, because of which we become qualified to go to the spiritual world at the end of this life, then we don't have to anymore face these miseries or difficulties by taking birth again and again in this place, which is declared to be a place filled with miseries. So, by spending time hearing from saintly persons about great personalities of the past, how they led their life in an ideal way, following the religious principles, taking association from saintly persons, and not losing their focus on the ultimate goal in spite of difficult circumstances. That is what we have to learn from these historical narrations. Then Bharadwaja, he is one of the great 7 rishis, Sapta rishis, and was present at the time of the birth ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishi sometimes undertook severe penances on the shore of the Ganges, and his ashrama is still celebrated Prayam Dhama. The Bhagavatam says, Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shuddhyet. This human form of life is especially meant for austerities. What kind of austerities? Divyam, tapo divyam. Austerities which are aimed at spiritual advancement. Not austerities like Hiranyakashipu performed for sake of gathering a lot of power and becoming mad after acquired power and terrorizing the whole universe. No, not that kind of austerity. That is austerity in the mode of ignorance. We should practice austerity in the mode of goodness. Goodness means the ultimate goal of all such austerities or any sacrifices or any other spiritual practices simply for the sake of spiritual advancement. Tapo divyam. Sattvam shuddhyet, by which our existence becomes purified of all material contamination, making us eligible to actually elevate ourselves to the spiritual platform to go back home to God. It is learned that this rishi, Bharadwaja, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Gritachi, one of the beautiful society girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen which was kept and preserved in an earthen pot, and from which Drona was born. These are all extraordinary events in the lives of great sages that, in spite of not combining with this society girl, so that the Rishi could conceive a son in her womb, his semen was kept in a pot from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is the son of Bharadwaja Muni. Maharshi Bharadwaja was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battle of Kurukshetra. Ultimately, people want peace. They don't want to be engaged in fighting and battle and war. So, in that sense, these are all great personalities who are situated in the mode of goodness. So, naturally, they strive for peace. Next is the description of Parashurama. He is also called as Renuka Sutta. Why? Because he is the son of Maharshi Jamadagni and Srimati Renuka. Thus, he is also known as Renuka Sutta, the son of Renuka. He is one of the powerful incarnations of God. His name is mentioned in the Vishavatara Stoka written by Jayadev Goswami. He killed the Kshatriya community as a whole 21 times. He went around the earth 21 times and killed all the miscreant Kshatriyas. With the blood of the Kshatriyas, he pleased the souls of his forefathers. Later on, he underwent severe penances at the Mahendra Parvata. After taking the whole earth from the Kshatriyas, he gave it in charity to Kashyapa Muni. See, his purpose was not to rule the whole world himself, no, because he is a Brahmana. But he killed the miscreant Kshatriyas, delivered them, purified them, and after getting the whole earth from the Kshatriyas, he gave it away in charity to Kashyapa Muni. Parashurama instructed the Dhanurveda or the science of fighting to Dronacharya because Dronacharya was a Brahmana. He was present during the coronation of Maharaj Yudhishthira and he celebrated the function along with other great rishis. Parashurama is so old that he met both Rama and Krishna at different times, millions of years apart. The appearance of Rama, the incarnation of Rama, and incarnation of Krishna. But Parashurama was there in both the periods. Parashurama fought with Ramachandra, but he accepted Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. He also praised Arjuna when he saw him with Krishna. When Bhishma refused to marry Amba, who wanted him to become her husband, Amba met Parashurama and by her request only, he asked Bhishma Deva to accept Amba as his wife. Bhishma refused to obey his order, although he was one of the spiritual masters of Bhishma Deva. Parashurama was a spiritual master, a teacher of Bhishma Deva. Parashurama fought with Bhishma when Bhishma neglected his warning. Both of them fought very severely, and at last Parashurama was pleased with Bhishma and gave him the benediction of becoming the greatest fighter in the world. Bhishma fought in the battle of Kurukshetra because he was the most experienced general in the entire army of the Kauravas. Most experienced general. Next, Srila Prabhupada describes Vasishta, the great celebrated sage among the Brahmanas known as Brahmarshi Vasishta. He is a prominent figure in both Ramayana and Mahabharata periods. He celebrated the coronation ceremony of personality of God Rama. He was also present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. There was a great tension between him and Vishwamitra, because Vishwamitra wanted the Kamadhenu or wish-fulfilling cow which Vasishta had. Vasishta refused to spare his Kamadhenu, and for this Vishwamitra killed his 100 sons. As a perfect Brahmana, he tolerated all the taunts of Vishwamitra. He tried to commit suicide, but his attempts were unsuccessful. He was saved every time he tried. He is also one of the 7 great rishis and husband of Arundhati, the famous star. We'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.